So we'll start the panel discussions with brief introductions from the panelists. And before that, thank you so much for taking time to attend the session today. And thank you so much, panelists, for joining the discussion. So Mark, if you can start a brief introduction.
Sure. My name is Mark Crutchington. I'm the VP of IT Infrastructure and Cybersecurity at Crane Worldwide Logistics. We're a global logistics firm with over 3,500 employees, and we have over 160 sites globally in over 30 countries.
I'm Manoj Tripathi. I'm the Global Vice President of Information and Product Security at Pindrop. It's a company based in Atlanta, and I work from the Houston one. Manage security and compliance globally for our company.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Oberlander. I'm a former CISO, global CISO, 8 times, large global companies, Fortune 500s, and so forth. Currently, I'm a book author, so I will do later today book signings outside. I've just finished my 3rd book, and I look forward to the discussion.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Diego Sosa. I'm the Executive Vice President of a fintech called Progressive Holdings. Former CISO for Cummins, large manufacturing in the world, then United Airlines, General Electric, and then the Brazilian government had too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Manikirti Nagotu. I'm a field CISO at SentinelOne. If you haven't heard of SentinelOne, please chat with me, also with our team right outside. Before SentinelOne, I was a security practitioner managing security program and security operations for a renewable energy company. I also have a passion for teaching. I have 3 LinkedIn learning courses. If you're interested, do check it out. So going into the panel discussion, the topic itself, navigating AI trust, risk, and security management in the transformation age. So I'm going to start with some of the statistics. And you might have been hearing AI so much from the last, I would say, like 18 months, generative AI, LLMs, all of that. So as per the Work Trend Index annual report, the use of generative AI has nearly doubled in the last 6 months, with 75% of global knowledge workers using it. So while we see the use of AI by organizations, we also see a lot of concerns, risks, and also leveraging AI in business. So with that, with the growing integration of AI systems, NIST AI RMF defined the trustworthiness of AI system as something which is reliable, accountable, transparent, valid, few other characteristics that go on. So how do you prioritize these principles in your AI strategy, and what does trust and ethics mean in the whole discussion for your organization? So Manoj, maybe you can start the discussion.
Thank you, Mani. So the thing with trust is it takes time, right? Trust takes time. So it's not an easy thing. You cannot just build trust in something overnight. And unfortunately, we do not have enough time for AI. AI is already here. So the question really is, how do you build trust in AI? And the key, in my opinion, is to start with the basic principles. It is to ensure that it was built correctly, which means it followed secure by design principles, that humans were reviewing the questions and the answers for AI, and at the same time, create a good risk management structure around it. At the end of the day, I mean, AI is just a piece of software, right? The question is, how do you manage it? How do you govern this? And how do you design the guardrails? And there's been some industry work already done around this. It's just coming together. And there are some other frameworks we will talk about. But the end result here is to ensure that we as humans put the right guardrails around AI and create a model to inspire trust. That will not happen without the participation of the entire security group, in my opinion.
Any other panelists would like to add?
I agree with you. Trust but verify, right? So if you read, I forgot which report was that, but the amount of wrong information also being created by AI is humongous, right? So always validating the information being generated by the AI is important. So I think we need to, I'll just put the different buckets, generative AI and the overall AI usage for intelligence. The generative AI for me is, it's trust, verify, put the proper guardrails, and in your company, make sure you have policies to drive the usage of that. So it's not only IT using that anymore, right? So you have all the departments also leveraging AI. So your legal department helping to write contracts using AI, your supply chain department using AI to verify and validate vendors, then you have your marketing department also using that for communications and everything else. So even for translation, right? Translating documents in different languages, AI is everywhere in each company right now. So making sure you have policies to guardrail the use of that and make sure you validate everything that's being created by AI until you feel the trust is in place, right? That's the most important.
Right. Michael?
Yeah, I would like to add. So first, I agree. Security by design is absolutely the right approach, and the policy, the guardrails, is absolutely necessary. I would also say I see some concerns that there's too much and too fast adaptation without doing the right things first. Right? If you look at all the deep fakes that are happening and all the other problems, all the attack vectors that we will talk about, it's important that companies realize you don't need to be the first. You need to be the one that does it secure. That builds trust, and over time, then people will adapt and use it. But if everyone is mistrusting AI, everyone is getting crazy about it, then we will lose that battle. So we need to be smart about the innovation and find the right balance between being fast and first versus being secure and right.
Yeah, I agree with everyone also. I would think if you're actually just using an open AI like a chat GPT or something like that, you know, it'll get you 80-90% of what you want, but you have to write in your own tone and add in your own comments. There's a lot of bias that can be in these things. Just, you know, it's like anything else, what you input is what you get output. But if you're building your own AI, you can start with an open framework like, you know, OpenAI or PyTorch or TensorFlow, something like that, and then use a framework like RAG to use your own data to train the models as well. So you take out a lot of the bias that's in there. But definitely the guardrails are important, acceptable use, you know, of AI and, you know, all the DLP controls that you might need. And then obviously the user security awareness has to ramp up with AI, not only just around the defensive side of things, but also how to use it appropriately.
Right. I would also like to add, like, in my conversations with different customers and conversations with security leaders as these panel discussions, one thing, as Mark, you pointed out, like, there are different risks associated with using an open source like a ChatGPT, which is available to all people who want to access it on the internet. And there are like some custom GPTs which are being developed by organizations and tech companies, and the risks are different, right? So each of them have different risks when you have a confidentiality, integrity, and availability side of things, right? So I think the approach from security leaders as well, the approach to how you use an open source and how do you approach a custom GPT is a bit different. I think it would be similar to like cloud shared responsibility model.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think when you're using like a chat GPT, people need to be trained on prompts because it's all in the prompt. Like if, for instance, a simple use case would be like going to chat GPT, and even with the paid premium version, if you say, write me a poem versus, you know, put a bunch of things like I have a master's or you have a master's in this, your Nobel Prize winner, all these kind of things, it goes into the expertness of the prompt and you'll get a completely different output. So.
Yeah, so something we have done in our company, we built this policy called do's and don'ts for usage of generative AI. So definitely, depending on where you are in the company, what type of information you can put. Actually, we do have the enterprise version of OpenAI, so which is a little bit better, but not 100% better. So making sure that they do understand what they can and cannot do, right? What type of information, for example, from our banking side. So we don't want people to put credit card information or social security information on the generative AI to generate reports or do whatever metrics they want to do or anything else. So the do's and don'ts is very important. And also, it's very important to monitor the data, right? So this is where data protection becomes one of the most important pillars in companies, because you need to have ways to measure what's being done in your environment, and if possible, you can stop.
Right. Going back to summarizing what each one of you has said, it's basically going back to the foundations of defense in depth, addressing the people, process, technology aspects, trying to detect, protect, monitor, respond, recover. So having said that, there's also regulations that are a bit changing and evolving across the globe, right? And I think yesterday or day before yesterday, there was a law passed by California governor on deepfakes, banning deepfakes related to elections in the next 120 days, if I'm not wrong. So the regulatory landscape is evolving and changing, and the most known one is the EU AI Act, which basically classifies AI systems into minimal, low, high risk, critical. So as these standards evolve, right, so the security leaders are charged with or burdened with another set of regulations they need to meet. So how do you approach this compliance or regulatory perspective when you start using AI in your organization?
Yeah, I'll take a stab. So first thing, I'm not an attorney. But yes, I mean, AI does have the word intelligence in it, but it lacks common sense, right? So I think we as security practitioners are the common sense around AI, and I think that's where significant regulation, laws, and frameworks are trying to do, in my opinion, just put common sense in AI. So having said that, there are good frameworks out there. I think the ISO 42001 is a very good one that I have looked at, and I think it's one that will align organizations, in my opinion, to not just the EU Act, but a bunch of federal legislation that is coming, not to mention the state ones that we talked about. So using one framework, whether it's the NIST risk management framework or the ISO 42001, in my opinion, those are a good place to start, even if your goal is not compliance at the end of the day. Because compliance should not lead the way, in my opinion. It's more about having the right security practices and then layering a compliance layer on top of it. So for us to comply with these regulations, the best approach is to adopt a common sense approach now, create, as Michael and Diego talked about as well, policies and good acceptable use, and build from that point on.
Yeah, I agree with you. The ISO 24001 is really a good one, and also the NIST AI risk management framework is great. And of course, I'm from Europe, so I'm familiar with the EU AI Act. And I'm actually glad that the EU did this time first, because it's otherwise the wild, wild west. And we have learned this lesson over the last 30 years, right? You can't just hope that the companies that do technology innovation will do it always right. So you sometimes have to put the guardrails first. Now, having said that, let's be smart about it. So you have done this with other compliance things, like we have the ISO 27001 series, which was originally the British standard, and so forth, how it has developed. And we had the NIST 800 series, the whole shebang, and CIS and PCI, you know, all these different ones. You don't need to follow every single thing word by word. What you do is you be smart about it. You build basically a chart, and then you find the amounts that are really covered in most of these frameworks. Then you build your regulations, your policy, your internal policies around that, the standards, and then you can specifically point out things for details. Look here, for details, go there. This is the way how you basically develop a compliance strategy.
Right. Any other additions from the panelists? I think we spoke about it a lot. Probably I'll add another aspect and a different point of view. I've seen security leaders and security practitioners complain about data regulations because there's so many of them. You have to follow each of them in a state, in the world, in the globe, in EU. There's a particular country, there's this global EU GDPR. So do you foresee any of that happening to AI regulations as such? Again, this is like a future prediction or a future approach.
Yeah, I'll take that one. If I remember the number, I think there's 121 bills right now in the Congress to be passed to regulate cybersecurity, and most of those are related to data, right? So at the end of the day, I'll tell you that 99% of all these regulations, all these frameworks, they overlap to each other. So as Michael was saying, you need to be smart in how to use those, right? So build your frameworks, whatever is the version you want to use. If it's ISO, use ISO. If it's NIST, use NIST. But see, okay, I need to comply with PCI, I need to comply with SOX, I need to comply whatever. So do the mapping, the overlapping. Don't overwhelm your team with so many regulations. So be smart on that one. Yes, definitely they're gonna do that to AI as well. I think we are trying to still to understand AI, to be honest, and the power. So I think there is a prediction saying that a new AI tool is built every. A new AI tool.
Mine was.
A new AI tool is built every 30 seconds nowadays. So definitely we're going to have to put some regulations, and you're going to start to see ban happening. So countries putting not only regulations, but sanctions around the usage of AI to avoid some of those elements.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Diego. I would also add in there that like whenever you're choosing, like a lot of these regulations, they do overlap and will overlap. You have to choose the one that's right for your company to use as a baseline, and then adopt to how your company is. So if you're only in the U.S. and you have no near-term plans to go international, you may choose NIST over ISO. Or if you are global, you may choose ISO over NIST. And it's not so much that these frameworks are, completely different than each other. It's what's accepted. Like I work at a global company now, and it's been a while since I worked at a global company. When we tell them we'll give them a NIST, our NIST assessment, and they're based out of China or somewhere like that, they're like, no, we want ISO or something, or we want a SOC 2. So those that are more readily acceptable is what you should choose and develop your patterns after.
Yeah, very rightly said. I think it differs by but the fundamentals remain the same, like how you approach and how do you want to meet your business needs on the compliance side. So we would pivot a bit to threat landscape now, trying to understand what is happening externally, what's happening in the threat landscape area. So there are a couple of reports that I can quote about, like Microsoft and OpenAI basically published a report on LLM threat landscape, how nation-state actors like Korean, Russian, and few others are leveraging LLMs to launch attacks against organizations. And even Sentinel Labs has basically published a couple of blogs on it's called Black Mamba. It's a proof of concept LLM malware. If you are interested, do check it out. And there are a few others discussions about business email compromise, like how there was a proof point report where it basically published how German companies are being attacked using LLMs. So if the panelists can share thoughts about the evolving threat landscape, that would be great.
Yeah, I can take this one to start with. Definitely, you are seeing the threat landscape evolve, and LLMs and AI is coming into play. You're starting to see more sophisticated phishing that comes in, and deepfakes are coming in. So obviously, it does change how we look at things, and I think some of the priorities would be around, really getting a handle on what users are doing and tracking those more thoroughly than you might have with some type of UEBA, but also, maybe a more of a layered defense approach as well. I know, defense in depth has always been around or been around for quite a while, but what other layers do you need to add to that, or do you need to add additional layers on top of things, such as email security? Because that's still one of the most often used attack vectors is through email. Business email compromise, again, it goes back to user awareness. If the CEO is now asking you for something and you've never heard from the CEO, or you've never interacted with him or her about this particular thing, then it's probably going to be a fake. Same thing on phone calls. I mean, I've seen several instances where someone is trying to call someone. It sounds exactly like that individual, and the voice is the same, but it's actually a fake. So as security leaders, we have to evolve just like threat actors are evolving and technology is evolving.
So it's a very interesting question, because I believe AI is creating totally different war zone for cybersecurity, right? So if you see the Verizon report, 78% of the attacks starts with humans, right? So human error is still the #1 vector, and AI deepfake is just elevating that threat. So I can just give an example that if you Google, you're going to see that. So where a person receives a Zoom call, is a deepfake Zoom call, it's her boss, and then right after she gets a phishing email for doing a bank transfer. So do you see the level of difficulty for your employees to define reality versus unreality? So I think the answer to that question is leveraging AI to combat AI. So we're gonna have to use AI. So hackers from North Korea, Russia, China, any country, even US, so they are using AI as a powerful tool. AI is also exponentially helping to create new malwares every single day. You don't need a super expert person, smart person to write code anymore. So they just go to AI and say, give me a code to do this X, Y, Z. Boom, the code is there. So you see the exponential number of new malwares being created, like going to the roofs. So we're gonna need to have AI to help us to identify, okay, was this created by AI? Was this an AI situation? So how do we verify? So that's the conflict we have in the company. So we want to control the usage of AI, but we need AI because AI is on the other side too.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so
Thank you.
So Diego, just FYI, I did not pay him to say that, but because there are companies out there.
Use two mics, Manoj. Yeah.
I can see why my mic would be shut off. But anyway, so I think there are companies out there that are in the business of deepfake like ours, and I think what Diego said really resonated, because one of the things we have is you need good AI to fight the bad AI. And I think that's where we are headed, where we need to ensure that we can use technology to figure out the right use of technologies. Is it happening or is it not happening? And we as human beings need to figure out what the right framework and the right AI structure for that is. So, absolutely.
So I would like to add, if you think about the AI modeling and all the things that are currently being developed, there is, in addition to all the threat vectors, all the attack vectors that you have in the regular technology field and the regular IT, OT, IoT, and so forth, you have at least 5 major problems, right? You have poisoning, you have a model evasion, and you have injection attacks, prompt injection attacks, and so forth. There's major attacks that need to be addressed and need to be verified and validated against. And the MITRE organization has put out a new kind of framework, the Atlas framework, similar what they earlier had with the attacks framework. I recommend that you review that and use that, right? It's important to validate and verify that these AI models have been tested against these new threats. In addition to all the other problems, think about that. These AI models run on infrastructure, either in the cloud or even on a private data center, and those attacks that were prior possible are still possible. They can be done against the APIs from the model. They can be done against the encryption keys from the model, and. So there's a lot of additional risks and additional threat vectors for AI that need to be properly addressed. So what we said earlier, security by design, doing it in the right fashion, doing it in the right controls is absolutely paramount, because the threat space and the risks, the attack surface is gigantically more and bigger than it was ever before.
Right. From SentinelOne, we do have a research team which is called Sentinel Labs, and they actually published a blog about it called Predator AI, which basically targets cloud applications. So if you are interested, check it out. I just wanted to quote a couple of instances where deepfakes are used recently. So if you are interested, do check it out. So one of them is a Ferrari CEO was deepfaked to an executive, and that was thwarted because he asked a question saying that, what is the latest book that is being recommended by you earlier? And the deepfake could not answer, and the attack was thwarted. So that's an interesting case study. Another one is the KnowBe4 case study, where they tried to recruit somebody remotely, and it turned out to be a North Korea threat actor. They basically deepfaked through the whole process, and KnowBe4 again thwarted the attack by mechanisms employed in the organization. So they also published a threat. A case study on this. So even if we don't have mics, can the back hear us just in case? Yes or no? A thumbs up. Oh, okay, cool. So that's an interesting case study from KnowBe4 that you can check it out. And I wanted to emphasize from all the points that panelists talked about, it's definitely OWASP top 10 LLM would be a guide point for you guys to start about for the LLM. MITRE Atlas framework is another one where they can refer to about the threat TTPs. Another one is the OECD AI incident database, which basically lists out all the AI incidents that are happening across the world. So considering that the external threat landscape is changing so much and new ways and innovative ways are being developed, and Diego, I think you said how threat actors do not need to have any kind of knowledge to launch attacks against organization, right? So for security leaders, how do you prioritize these risks arising from threats? Because each of you are from a different industry, and the way you approach security controls and security strategy would be unique to your organization. So if you can share your thoughts on that.
Okay, I'll take this one first. I think it's a lot like you would do anything else. You have to really, first of all, we ask our end users to be aware of things, so we need to be aware of what those threats are so we can then train our users. That's like simple. But then understanding your environment and where your attack vectors might be, will help as well, help you prioritize. So then you go to any type of risk management approach where you look at what are your keys to the kingdom, or where are all your sophisticated systems that need to be up and running. We have 4 right now. If any one of those 4 systems went down, we may stop our business. So it's taking that risk-based approach, and then you have to evaluate, get a little bit more intelligent about, the threats that are out there and why they might want to attack you, and then you can shift your controls or your priorities to those particular areas.
I agree with you, Mark. And one area that we have focused a lot is behavior analysis in our environment, right? Because at the end of the day, AI is changing behaviors. So you need to make sure you have a strong strategy about behavior analysis. By the way, SentinelOne is one of our products, and they have been very helpful to us to analyze and identify behaviors in our environment, right? Because at the end of the day, small things can be captured through your intelligence and say, okay, this is not a regular behavior for this system, this user, or this traffic. So those are very important things. So you can have the most fancy technologies. Users are going to be users always, right? So I like to say attacks happen in 2 ways, 2 legs or 2 wires, right? So that's how it happens. So you need to make sure you understand how your environment behaves, have the proper strategy to identify the misbehavior, and then react.
Yeah, just to add to that, so I agree with you, what you said. I think what is necessary is really an AI bill of materials, an AI bomb, so to speak. That's important because you have, in the last 30, 40 years, not done asset management very well, and it always starts with the inventory. You can't secure if you don't know what you have. So make sure that your organization understands the usage already of AI, get your AI bomb established. Similarly with encryption, other bombs there. It's necessary to do that kind of front work first, instead of rushing it and then getting like mushrooms everywhere.
It's just to complement, so we are talking about AI, all this fancy technology, but if I ask a question to you, do you know all the assets in your environment? Do you know all the data and types of data and the classification of your data? Because I'll tell you, you can have the best technology in place, but these foundational items, if they're not in place, still you're not able to identify behaviors or analysis anything, or do analysis on anything because you do not know your environment. So the basics, still the basics, and the most important, get to know your environment because you cannot respond to things that you don't know.
Yeah, and same thing I agree with you, Diego, and same thing on the vulnerabilities. I mean, if you're not good at patching right now and you can't patch relatively quickly, or you mentioned knowing your assets, but also asset discovery when it comes onto your network, or to block it or quarantine it, put it in the right area, those baseline things have to be optimal these days.
Yeah, I think I agree with my panelist here. I think one of the things that we can really focus on is simplification, because what is happening is, we all experience burnout in some shape or form. I think it's real, and now as security professionals, we have to deal with one more threat, which is the threats from AI, right, and what it can cause. So the way that we can handle most of these is by having a simple framework. I think Mark talked about it, Diego, Michael, they all talked about it. The goal is to ensure that you do not have to, at least initially, invent a new framework. Use your own risk management framework, use your own security best practices, and try to fit AI into those existing methods. Because as I was saying, it's a piece of software. So you can actually use your existing models and fit AI into that. And then you layer on some of these additional things, and you can only when you do these basics, then you can talk about like the LLM threats, or you can talk about poisoning, you can talk about advanced detection and other methods. But I think where we all are truly right now is at the basics, and just use an existing framework to manage that.
Yeah, now that everybody on the panel has talked about risk management in some form, I just want to turn into talking about security operations. Because I'm a bit biased towards security operations because I was a SOC analyst, SOC manager too, and I know the pain I went through when I was managing security operations. And the common challenge that security operations teams have is this data in siloed repositories, and which in turn affects the mean time to detect and respond, because you need to collect the data from different sources, try to map all the data sources, and then figure out like if the event is an incident or not. And like, what is the advantage of having all of this data together, seeing that AI is evolving? If you can share your thoughts on like how it would improve for cyber investigations. Probably Diego, do you want to go first?
I'm just thinking about this question. I think it's a powerful question. Having the data on the same place definitely is going to help, but I think it's less about the place where the data is sitting, is how you're correlating the data. Right? Because if you don't have the proper correlation, it doesn't matter where it sits. So you need to understand how different types of data are interacting, and then what is the results of that interaction that you should be paying attention in. So when you go to a SOC team, right, so there is a lot of noise that's generated every day because gazillions of transactions being performed, so people accessing everything all the time. So you need to make sure you have you denoise, right, the environment. I think that's where AI can help, definitely helping to map the data usage, mapping the data correlation, and just remove the low-hanging fruit and give to the analyst the things that really have signals to be an incident or an event, right, that needs to be investigated. So definitely the aggregation of data helps in leapfrog that investigation because it's easier. You don't have to go everywhere. But you know what? It's going to be hard. Unless you're a 100% cloud-based company, everything in one place, I'll tell you, there is many manufacturing companies here. I guess your data is everywhere, data closets. Anybody has a data closet here that you don't know? I do. So you need to make sure you have your security controls in every single place in your organization and is able to correlate events and data to ensure you see everything.
Yeah, I want just to underline what Diego just said. So there is already technology out there. I'm sitting on a board of one of these companies, and this is very important to do that automation and that integration and that correlation. If you have your SIM systems in place today and even source system in place, they are not really fulfilling that. At least what I have seen in my life, it's not doing what is necessary. It's important to really bring this data together to basically help the analysts to sift through hundreds and billions, billions of incidents and events, and then shrink it down to a very small number of actionable items that need to be taken care of. This kind of technology is there. Some of it is leveraged with AI, but most important is that the automation is happening, regardless if this is with an AI model or else, but it's important to use automation and not humans for that.
Right.
Yeah. If I may add, one thing that we have to think about is that security operations is not a linear problem. What I mean by that is, let's say you were getting 200 alerts a day, and you had, hypothetically, 2 analysts looking at that. If you go from 200 alerts to 400 alerts, you are not going to get 4 analysts now, right? We all know this. I think as security practitioners and leaders, we know this. So that's why I say that security operations is not a linear problem. So we cannot solve it in a traditional way. We have to look at all of the methods that the panelists talked about, and then figure out what is the best way to optimize, what is the best way to focus your attention on the most useful alerts, and then how do you have a threat hunting or a similar program where you're not ignoring the past ones. Because we also know that if we miss something, the chances of that becoming a bigger incident down the road is always high. So ensuring that you have a 2-pronged strategy where you are responding to the alerts, but at the same time have a program in place to go back and threat hunt to find anything that you have missed, I think, in my opinion, covers this non-linear aspect.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I'm going to quote what Manny was thinking to Michael. It's like, have you seen Sentinel-1? No, kidding. I saw that look.
Purple AI? Yeah, I have Purple AI. If you want to know more about Purple AI, don't talk to her. Talk to the customer that uses it.
Yes. Yeah. Or
Thank you.
I was a customer as well. So, but no. All kidding aside, I also believe that each of the panels are correct. You do need humans in the loop as well. Like a lot of the systems right now, they're great getting you down to like what you really need to investigate, but there's still a human that's going to need to do some investigation at some of these very sophisticated threats, just to correlate what's been correlated in that. But also what goes a long way, we talked about SOARs, is the playbooks. Maybe if it's got a specific risk score, you can call it 80 out of 100 or whatever, it gets quarantined automatically. And then you go do your human in the loop correlation with that. So.
Right. I think the final takeaways for the audience for today, how to approach AI securely, but also utilize AI for defending as security leaders. If you can share like top 2 takeaways, starting with Mark, and then we will go around the panel.
So final takeaways, I think, I think we all have to, we cannot be the party of no. I remember when cloud came out, and to me AI is just another one of those cloud things. We've been using AI for a long time, but it's now just becoming a buzzword. So security has often got the reputation of being the party of no. We need to be the party of yes, but we need to do these things. So be open to the business and be open, actually go to them and get embedded with the business if you can, if you have the manpower to do that, and try to find out what they're trying to use AI for and get ahead of the problems that may arise if you leave any risk unmitigated. So I think that's one, but I believe also from just a pure security practitioner's perspective, we need to up our threat intelligence and how we're going out and mining on how AI is being used by threat actors, so then we can come back and strengthen our own defenses internally.
Yeah, Manoj.
Yeah, I mean, if I agree 100% with that, and if I can add some additional thoughts, I would say, let's approach AI without fear. We know that there is enough FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt about AI, but let's approach it without fear. And the best way to negate fear, in my opinion, is education and awareness. And before we can educate others, we need to first educate ourselves. So the key really as security practitioners, in my opinion, is to understand AI, understand, good, like we said, good AI from bad AI, how you can leverage it, how you can educate yourselves and take ourselves to the next level. Once we have that, that puts us in a much better position to educate our users and the extended community. But it starts with us, in my opinion.
Yeah, by the way, I just wanted to say, so I was not bashing Sentinel-1 or anyone. Like, I was talking generally about all the SIMs and SOARs. Now, for you to take home, I think what we said here earlier is important. Get your policies in place, right? Leverage the standards that are already there. Make sure that you develop an AI bomb, that you understand where is already usage happening. And then what my predecessors here said, it's important that security is not hindering the business. It's very important that security gets ahead of the game, help build the guardrails, make the business execute faster by doing so. Instead of blocking it completely, tell them how to do it in the right fashion. Help them to shape the future and use AI where possible and where necessary in a secure fashion.
I think they have said almost everything. So I would just say security should be a business enabler, not a roadblocker, right? So that's number one. Otherwise, you're going to become a threat yourself to your company. Number two, AI is not our enemy, right? It's here to help. And we will stay. Sorry, we're gonna live in this new era where AI is gonna be doing a lot of the things we do. I think it's how we leverage AI is the most important thing. So what they already told here to us, policies, compliance, regulations, do's and don'ts, right? Guidelines, everything is important, but make sure you have a good understanding on how AI is being used in your environment. And what are the necessary things that you need to implement to your own business? Because maybe what works for me does not work to you. Maybe a good source of information to you, but you need to understand how AI is being used in your environment and define the strategy for your own business.
Yeah.
I would also add, I think we need to be involved at helping set our company's AI strategy as well. And we need security practitioners, CISOs, we need a seat at the table when it comes to how the company is using AIs so we can better develop the guardrails that are needed.
Yeah, I think I would like to end with the summarization of like what panelists have said, like having that AI strategy, having conversations with your security team on what is the backlog with regards to investigation, cyber incident response would be a good way to go about. And thank you so much for panelists for joining us today. I think now we'll open for Q&A.
Yeah, so let's give everybody a round of applause. Thanks very much. So being a Houston native, I left Kima this morning about 2 hours before I was supposed to be here and didn't make it in time to introduce the panel. So my name is Mike Rochelle. I'm the president of the Association for Information Technology Professionals Lone Star, which covers Texas online all around. I'm also a CIO, and I'm going to be heading the panel at 11 o'clock, so come in, we'll talk a little bit more what I'm going to introduce here. You guys have really done a really good job of covering the AI angle of the risk that we're facing from a security perspective. I want to throw a current event in. I was listening as I was driving here for 2 hours to multiple analysts talking about what's going on in Lebanon right now. So we've talked about the data, we've talked about the devices, and I think it was Diego that said, do you know your assets? So I think that question is relevant at a much deeper level today than it was before the tipping point of 2 days ago, right? So do you guys have any thoughts about black swan analysis that you need to do of your own supply chain to determine whether you're protecting your employees at whatever level? And I'll go around the audience.
So let me take this one. So I think actually it was always a problem, right? We have all said that today, you know your assets, you need to know your assets. I said the AI bomb is important, and I think this was just one proof of that. Sure. And it's very important to understand what kind of risks you face, and if you can't manage your risk because you don't know your assets, that's really a problem. That's what I would say back. So it's not a surprise to me.
Yeah, so before you answer, did you ever think that you had to worry about explosive material in the devices that you're handing to your employees?
Well, so it depends in the business you work with, right? So this is going to be part of the quality check, right? So you can be a supplier of different companies. So if you're in a manufacturer, I used to work for a large adjacent company, we were providing engines. So definitely checking that no explosives were there. Definitely is something that should be on the quality process and check. But I'll tell you, the supply chain is one of the most risky areas for companies, right? So because you're talking about an environment you cannot control 100%. You can enforce through contract language some of the elements that need to be in place, but then the trust and verify, right? So this whole stuff that happens in the Middle East right now it was not something that happens in the last 2 weeks. It is being planned for years and years, right? So in order to get to hundreds of thousands or whatever, tens of thousands of devices and put all those micro explosives, is being planned for many, many, many years. So it's not something that happens day to night. So I think that it's a totally different question.
And I just want to add 1 or 2 more sentences. So remember the Log4j. Now, this was not a physical explosive thing, but the Log4j attack a few years back, I remember this took weeks in some companies, weeks to fix the problem, because we did not know what kind of bill of software material we have in our supply chain. And similarly, there were other attacks. And remember when the NSA basically used the Cisco devices to plan stuff, and what is China doing in hardware things, right? So supply chain is a major threat vector, and companies that want to be prepared, have to completely analyze their supply chain comprehensively, and then ask these vendors and make it in the contracts what kind of controls are in place, what kind of like signatures or digital signatures and so forth are there.
And just, we don't need to go that far, guys. So it's not about cyber attacks, right? Just remember what happens 4 or 5 weeks ago with a major endpoint protection company. Yeah. They were just doing a release of a patching and they took the entire world down. So basically, you need to make sure you have vetting process of your suppliers, because maybe they are doing the right things, but the wrong way. Yeah. Right? Testing in production, maybe. Just kidding. But then you took the entire world down because you did not have the vetting process.
And same thing going back to 2020 in December. We all remember SolarWinds, how that affected everyone. So.
Come at 11 o'clock. I'll continue this conversation on the pod.
Comment question.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ganesh. I'm the Director of IT for Encino Environmental Systems. I have one question. We have implemented Zero Trust architecture. So we have the tools at the network level, application level, data level, or even the endpoint level. Even MFA we implemented. But AI, we have not implemented anything. So I want to ask you directly, where in this, either at the network level or application level or data level or endpoint level, where we can apply AI, and also any tools that you recommend, at least for our environment.
I think if I understood well, you're asking on these different layers, right? Application users, where we apply the AI solution, right? So the short answer to you is you can apply everywhere, right? So from the application development where you're analyzing codes, to the infrastructure level where you're analyzing traffic, to the user level where you're analyzing behavior, right? So AI can be applied to anyone. So you spoke about the zero trust is a buzzword. So zero trust means different things to different people. So I think you need to define what zero trust means to your organization. What are the level of analysis you need to perform and where AI can help you to get those analysis done?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would add, you also talked about the network and the application side. So one thing I would add is when you think about applying AI defenses, you should think about applying AI defenses at to the point where you are going to use the AI data, or you are dependent on the AI data to do something. Once you identify those points, those are the trust points in your network.
Okay, we have one more question from Will.
Good morning. Quick question. What is your game plan for the threat of AI and replacing the information technology workforce? Because if we go away, there's no more.
I was expecting that question at some point.
I would go with this. I don't know if AI is going to replace the knowledge worker. I think what it will do is, first of all, slow down that hiring process and like how many workers you might need. But I would guess for every knowledge worker, you're either going to get on the AI train or you're going to get left behind. You know, I have a young son right now that's in a university studying cybersecurity, and I'm like, you know, Jake, yes, cybersecurity is great, but 2 other things you need to think about: cloud and AI, and get on board with that. So I believe that you always need a human in the loop, and it's how you empower as a business your knowledge workers to use AI so you can become more efficient as a business will go a long way. But if you're a knowledge worker and you're not learning AI right now, you are going to get left behind. So.
Marty, you had an answer to the question before. Do you want to go there, or do you want to answer this one?
I can answer both. So the first one, I think the question about like how AI needs to be used, it depends on what applications do you use. So do you want to track which of the triad, right? Was it confidentiality, the leak of the data that you're trying to address the risk about? Or is it the availability of the applications that you're worried about, that some kind of attack would, bring down all the applications? And it also depends the kind of threats. So it ties down to your risk register and risk management strategy as to what risks and threats you have and what are the ones that you want to address priority-wise, right? So, and in terms of deployment of tools, the second question of yours, so like what solutions are there? So SentinelOne is an AI company started like 10 years back. So we start off with an EDR and we have like cloud identity. Yeah, okay, cool. So, yeah, Purple AI is another one which is basically addressing security operations challenges, as Diego mentioned earlier. So, that's the one. And the second question is about if AI is going to replace the workers. I think I definitely agree with Mark. It's with any technology adoption. So, you need to learn and adapt and scale. So, there's definitely a different, I think in the start of the conversation, Mark mentioned about a different tech stack for AI, which basically talks about, it's different from traditional IT system, right? So, you have an operating system, you have an application, whether it's on-premise or like cloud. But for AI tech stack, you're talking about RAC, you're talking about chain of thought, you're talking about vector databases, you're talking about synthetic data. So the triangle or the AI tech stack is totally different from a traditional IT system. So as every other technology, whether it is social media, whether it is cloud, new technology comes in and we adapt to it. So it's always the people who adapt to it.
Awesome, very good answers. And Anna has a question.
Hey, my name is Anna. I help the organizations with their security and compliance controls and SOC analysis and stuff like that. What's your take on responsible AI, especially because after the onset of people quickly learning the prompt engineering and trying to use AI, maybe threats, maybe attacks, or maybe just, sitting in the organization and trying to get it's like, I ran into a client where an employee, they just installed, they got Copilot implemented, and he was able to access some of the privileged information so somewhere AI has loopholes on our back. It's not really accessing data strictly on our back things. So the industry should move towards responsible AI, and what's your take on it? I want to hear from Manoj and Diego and Sean. Where are we heading?
Yeah, no, great question. I think the way, in my opinion, we can handle this is by splitting this problem into two different things, right? One is, like you mentioned, the general category of responsible AI. Very similar to what Mark said earlier. It's like the cloud, or I call it the internet, So it's here to stay. So the first step is to create policies and awareness and more acceptability of using it in the right way. I think that awareness is the first bucket that I put in. And I believe that a lot of organizations today are doing the right thing, but they are resorting to fear, right? They're saying, here's something you have to be afraid of. So let's remove the fear, let's create the right responsible use AI policies and steps to do that. The second is when we talk about guardrails, we know that AI is here to stay. So which means that you create your own internal environments. For example, there are ways to self-host LLMs in your data center. You can work with your IT teams and say, I don't want to use the public AI, give me an AI in our data center that is managing and has the right guardrails. I think enabling that for the company allows people to not go use something that is prohibited and instead turn their attention to using AI in a allowed and authorized manner. I think companies who are handling both of these are ahead of the game.
Yeah, just from a responsible AI perspective, right, you would also want to approach from a people process technology perspective, and you wanted tools which address these principles in the first place. And there are like so many moving pieces that are happening right now in the AI world from a regulation perspective, from the way the tools are being developed, the whole AI development life cycle. And it's also that you have to understand the business needs. And every time when we talk about security, right, we need to map to the business goals. So how business wants to approach security? Are we risk aware? Is the business being informed of the risks? What are the implications in the future? And when you talk about regulatory and compliance point of view, always take the help of finance, legal teams in addressing the questions related to how to use the tools within your environment. That would give a bit more clarity because AI is evolving and every country in the world is trying to figure out, should we come up with a new AI law? Should we come up with a new regulation? And states are also coming up with their own regulations. So
beautiful. And Jide has a question.
Hi, thank you guys. Just like you said, every country coming up with a new AI laws. I was thinking of what's your take on AI in the GDPR space? Because that's a very complicated one, and I just want to see what your take is.
The right to be forgotten, maybe, right? So ask the AI to forget something. I think it's regulation, right? And to be honest, the GDPR per se will be fine-tuned because of the AI regulations that the European Union is creating. But to be honest, a lot of things that's written there in the GDPR today in somehow touches, right, the usage of AI, because it's about data protection, and you think about generative AI is just about creating data, right, and what type of data you do have in your environment. So I don't think it's anything super new. I think there will be some tuning on the AI aspect for GDPR, but the data protection element is already there.
Yeah, from the GDPR perspective, or the EU AI Act that came into existence a couple of months earlier, I think what's probably the panelists can answer, but what's missing is like the marrying the data regulations to the AI regulations, having that roadmap planned in for each of the regulations each country comes up with. But Diego, as you said, like it's not new. It's just tying the things together. As with any cyber regulations, right? When you try to implement, there will be so many overlapping pieces. But yeah, again, it's evolving. And it's hard to like predict or say a definitive answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that the guidance, around GDPR and AI is going to evolve. But here's the irony: most companies would be using AI to comply with GDPR. So I think that's the irony, and I think that's the aspect that we will all have to manage and figure out. How do you comply with something so complex as GDPR without using technology? And it is impossible. Yeah. So I think that's, once you approach it from that perspective, the key really is the same things we have talked about. How do you put the guardrails? How do you ensure that you are, quote unquote, meeting all of the data subject rights and other requirements of GDPR while safely using AI?
I think I would like to add one point about because I heard something about the GDPR here. So most people don't realize that actually in the GDPR, it's very clear that there should not be completely automated decisions about humans. What I currently see in a lot of HR processes, in hiring, in filtering, is a lot of AI making those decisions. That is something that needs to be really investigated / thought about. I think the current approach that many companies use with their HR systems, leveraging AI in a certain fashion to make decisions about humans, is not right. That's my take on that.
Manny, last thoughts.
Yeah, I think the panelists have spoken enough, and I think most of the questions are being addressed. But for any other questions, please feel free to reach out to like any of the panelists here or me. I think that should be it.
That's it. Great. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much, panelists. Great job.